Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Talking Tuesdays. My name is Tanvi Sharma, and our topic for today is transitioning baby. So it is in continuation of our series that we are doing, Know Your Baby. So I'm just going to add Divya. Hi, Anshika. Okay, while we are waiting for Divya, let me just get my AC sorted. Sorry about that. Hi, world upbringing. Hi, Adi Sindhu. All right. There we are. Hi, Divya.
Hi.
Hi. So, welcome everyone. Thank you, World Upbringing. Loads of love back to you and more power to you as well. And thank you for writing to us. I know we owe you a reply as well. So, I'm going to do that. So, our topic for Talking to Tuesdays for today is transitioning baby. Too many T's actually. Tanvi, T. Is the transitioning baby. And like I said, it's in continuation of to the series that we are doing. So over to you, Divya.
Okay, so if some of you have read our post, then you will see that it's still a transition from womb to the world. And when I had when I had first suggested this topic again, we had a little discussion, Tanvi and me, about saying, isn't it the same? Well, for the baby, the transition or the time, it's one timeline continuation. But just for our own understanding, we've kind of made it into two parts. So when we did the first one, and I'm going to do a quick recap, we talked about coming into the world from the unborn baby's perspective. So a fetus coming into the world and making the physiological changes, trying to fit in, seeing a new paradigm. But our parent-infant pathways are not about that transition. So our parent-infant pathways are about supporting parents to look at things about the baby. And therefore, it's going to be a little bit different. So let's say that by the last month, the baby is organizing its, to use a better word, sleep and wake cycles. And when you look at it, babies are maximum movement we see at 9 weeks of gestation. And we've already covered this, that this movement is not random. This is a very synchronized exercise program that the baby is doing. So, so as the baby gets older and older in utero, the states of consciousness, that's what it's called if you want to look at it, are getting more organized in terms of preparing to come outside. And as the baby comes out, we look at the baby and we see, okay, what does this baby do? It cries, it eats, it sleeps. But if you begin to understand its state of being or consciousness outside, you'll be able to organize yourself to meet the baby's needs. For example, they put the states of the baby in 6 different categories. So there are 6, and usually a way to look at it is that it is escalating from the least energetic to the most energetic. So we'll say there are 2 sleep states, there are 2 waking states, there's the most activated state, which is crying, and then of course there's drowsiness, which kind of transitions between the 2 states. So let's just quickly have a look at them. So we have 2 sleep states. If you understand those, our next section on sleep will become better and easier to understand. So the two sleep states for babies are quiet sleep and active sleep. And so the difference between baby sleep and our sleep is that we have 5 different levels of sleep, how our brain changes, but they have two, and they're very distinct when you look at them. In a deep sleep, the baby will be really quiet. Barely you will see the breathing. Sometimes mothers will go and check if the baby is breathing or not. Oh my God, so still. And then an occasional startle like that. And then they'll go back. In contrast, active sleep looks like their eyes are flickering, their faces have a lot of expression, their hands are moving. It seems like the baby is waking up, but it's still a sleep state. So these are the two states of sleep. There are two states of waking, and one of them is called active awake, and one is quiet awake. So the quiet awake, like the quiet sleep, is very, very immobile. The baby is like, eyes are really bright and they're looking for contact. And that's when people start talking to their babies. That's when they are paying attention to you. And if you can recognize that state, then you know that this is the time to talk to the baby. This is the time to engage with the baby. This is learning moment. And in contrast, active wake would be a lot of hand and feet movement. They seem quite unrhythmic to us, or they uncoordinated, but they do have a purpose, a very consistent purpose in those movements. And so that's a lot of movement, but the eyes are a little glazed over. So you're not really paying attention, but you're awake. And each one has a specific purpose. And then, of course, there's crying. And the crying is quite interesting if you look at it. In itself is a whole language for the baby to talk to the parents. Um, you might find if you're looking at, especially when we do breastfeeding classes, we talk about cues of hunger. The early cues of hunger do not include crying. Sandy. It's interesting. You know how we have these muhavras that when the baby cries, only then the mother feeds the baby. कि, माँ भी बच्चे को रोए बगैर दूध नहीं देती. That's not true. So if you're looking at them, their first cues of crying are not about of hunger are not about crying. They'll make mouthing movements, and this tells you that nature has taken into account that this mother is engaged or this care provider is engaged with the baby. So they're watching the baby. They're looking out for these cues, and then when the mother meets those cues, it brings something for the baby, saying that yes, of course, my hunger is taken care of, but somebody was paying attention to me. And that's wonderful. We find that in hunger cues, if you look at the chart that's really popular, the first beginning of cry is a little sound. Maybe, and no baby is expecting the mother to pay attention, like, I'm only looking at the baby and doing nothing else. Listen to me, as if I would call out to you. So if I walk into the room and you haven't seen me, I'll say, hi, Tanvi. So that's a little cry that says, listen to me. And only after that has been ignored, that is there a robust crying. And then, of course, it escalates. So crying in itself will become a whole new way of knowing the baby. But cry is not a part of their early cues. And so it's interesting that we think about crying as a communication, but I'd like to say crying is actually call for help, not just communication. It's like a loud scream for help. So the crying also escalates through. And of course, the sixth state is drowsiness, where the baby sequences from awake state to sleep state. So in a newborn period, the baby, about 10% of their time is in quiet alert or awake. And starting from birth, at the point of birth, as this baby is transitioning, they are in a state of quiet alert or quiet awake. What does that tell us? That tells us that this baby arrives or transitions into the world on a more human level, on a more interactive social level, to learn quickly its surroundings and adapt. So it arrives for that first golden hour. And we've talked about it in so many different ways, from the perspective of breastfeeding and the breast draw, from the perspective of stress and transitioning baby with a lot of nervous system stuff happening. But here's another approach to that, that this baby arrives in the world and has a really long period of quiet alert. And that's the learning mechanism. And in that hour, the more we interact, the gently we meet the baby, the more the baby learns about what home is. And again, it goes back to that golden hour that the mother speaks softly in the sing-song manner, the father speaks, there's some contact, touching, stroking. It's interesting that it's there. And then thereafter, it's about 10% of that time. And when we look at the baby's cues, when we look at these pathways, when we understand his behavior, his organization or her organization, we are able to synchronize our rhythm to the baby's rhythm. Why is that important? Because the baby's brain is a bit on autopilot. It's meeting physiological needs in terms of, do I have capacity to stay awake a little bit longer? Do I have capacity to go hungry a little bit longer? And the answer is no. Look at my body weight. Look at the growth phenomena that I have. And if I have to wait that extra time for food, what would that mean to me in terms of my growth? So I'm not only am I needing food, that's one, calories, but the stress of not being met there, not knowing when I will be met, puts me into a stressful zone of saying that, oh my God, will I survive? And that kind of rapidly, feeds into my sugar deposits or sugar, metabolism. And then I get a blood sugar dip. And that would lead to some change in the body in terms of muscles, in terms of awakeness, alertness, ability to suck, and kind of becomes a negative spiral. So I know that we want to organize our lives. And I know that because we don't have this information and we have all kinds of other information coming. Remember, we talked last time of how much this information is coming from family. And it may not be true, but we are pushing our children to an edge of stress by just not understanding this. So if you just understood and looked at the cues, whether they were hunger, whether they were sleep, whether they were, awake, whether there was need to interact, that I'm alert now is the time to talk to me. We might be able to meet their rhythms, and of course that meeting will help the growth of their brain and their bodies. But as their brains evolve and grow, they might get some tolerance. And remember last time we had a question saying that we should put them to discomfort. As we understand that, what arises for you, if you let this information land in you, what might arise for you about pushing the baby a little bit to discomfort? When would be that time? And then you'll be able to see how the baby is tolerating the rhythms and a little pushing of the rhythms. And of course, meeting this baby's need over and over again over a continuum of time is also kind of a foundation of security, on which the tolerance of that destruction can happen even better. The more solid the foundation is, the more you can load it later. So understanding these states of the baby, understanding these, how the baby is transitioning and is preparing to come into the world, but how he comes, this new transitioning baby is in the world, looking at these states, understanding them, making a little note for yourself about your baby's way of wakefulness, of how they look around for interaction. What are your cues of sleep? What may be the position that might help the baby to sleep? How much is the crying? And also when we talk about sleep, when we talk about crying, you'll find two very different narratives going on. So how much is the crying? What seemed to soothe them? What helps them? These are not just management of symptoms. What helps my child go to sleep or what helps my child stop crying? It's not just a management of that symptom of crying or sleepiness. it's also an insight to how the brain is working, what the needs of the baby may be. And then, of course, when they talk to, say, a professional, sometimes they come to me, my baby comes to the breast and moves away for breastfeeding, and then we want to explore what is it that's bringing the baby to the breast, which is instinct, which is how they are coded, but what takes them away? What may have happened that has left an imprint on this baby through the journey of birth, through prenatal period, that might be getting in the way. So it's like a double bind. I need to suck to survive, but my first experience of something in my mouth was extremely unpleasant because the nurse had pushed, say, a tube harshly into my mouth. Or say the baby had a little bit of meconium. So there was a bit of stress going on. There was panic around. There may have been an instrument. And now, just to get that meconium out of the baby's apparatus, somebody had stuck that. Now, for a baby who had just had a suction or a baby who had gone through some stress and then had a suction would be two very different imprints. As we begin to appreciate them, we can help the baby, resolve it. Majority of our issues might settle if we have a willing ear. How many times do we actually listen to what the baby is saying? Because we don't think the baby is saying. Hear stories about sleep. Majority of people will ask us, when will my baby sleep through the night? That has no consideration or even a thought about that the baby may not want to sleep through the night or does not need to sleep through the night, or it may be actually detrimental for the baby to sleep through the night.
And in
Or,
fact, one of the topics that we covered during our coffee cons, and Himani Dalmia had also mentioned that nobody sleeps through the night, not even us
yeah,
as adults.
that was an eye-opener for me, actually, Tanvi. And then I began to think that, isn't it interesting that, uh, and I've started to incorporate it as well in my class to say that when moms tell us in the 9th month that I get up many times to go to the bathroom, and they then again start to talk about that story about I'm not getting enough sleep, I usually use that to say, go research it. Nobody sleeps through the night. So the skill is not that you're waking up,
Yeah,
but the skill is that how can you regulate enough to go back to sleep? And
right.
that would be such a wonderful tool for you to have if you're breastfeeding, because then you already have the skill to wake up, feed your baby, and go back to sleep. So that doesn't take away your rest. It may give you a different pattern of sleep, but it doesn't take away your rest. And if you choose to become a mother who is bed sharing and breastfeeding, then even that time is cut out. But it's so good to know that we don't sleep through the night, and that we are able to regulate ourselves back to sleep. And so if my sleep is disturbed by going to the bathroom 3 times, my focus should be what will help me go back to sleep, because that'll become a phenomenal tool in early parenting, in my early newborn period. But because we are taught about the worry, the frustration of I don't get enough sleep, I'm not able to get enough sleep, what does this kind of narration do to our nervous system? It's making us anxious. Anxious means we have lesser chances of self-regulating. We need more
Right.
effort to self-regulate. So it's kind of a self-defeating proposition to get caught up with these common narratives that we have around pregnancy, around birthing, around parenting. So for our transition baby, know that your baby is coming with an organized rhythm, a rhythm that is perfect and may be different from every other baby for them to regulate and grow. So appropriate amounts of rest and learning and a wakefulness. So the quiet alert would be a time of learning, inputting, but an active alert is also a development phase, because as babies move their hand and feet, and in their head it's coordinated. We may think they are uncoordinated, but in their head it's coordinated. They are actually wiring their nerves, which is from the core to periphery, which means I am continuously sending signals to my extremities to get them under control. We see an example of this when we start teaching our children to write. That we accept that when they first hold the pencil and start writing, they don't have control over their pencil or their crayon, how they color, and it's all over the place. It's random movements because the brain is sending an impulse to the hand to move, but it's not able to control the movement. But as they practice, as they repeat that exercise, as they do the coordination, and those neural pathways are worked over and over and over again, they get control over their handwriting, of how their hand will move. But it starts in utero and in early newborn period. Only thing is we're not seeing a result of a coloring or a writing or a cursive writing. So we don't think that this movement means anything. But imagine if we did understand and then we saw this baby moving. It'll be very interesting. So one of the very interesting things that I learned over the course of learning this is that babies move in rhythm to their mother's voice. And it's called entrainment. And it is the building block of conversation later. And so they're not random. They are already synchronizing to you. It's there. They have a rhythm, and they're open to kind of mesh it with yours. But point is that what we're expecting them to mesh with is, have a discipline of sleep, have a discipline of eating, is not a rhythm of our body. It's a routine.
Yeah.
So when the baby is transitioning for a parenting pathway, we should not expect routines from them because their brains are not capable of delivering it. But if we meet their rhythm and gradually begin to expand, what their tolerance is, they'll fall into or they will grow into another rhythm, which they would anyways, but we could match and synchronize our rhythm. And it'd be easier for us to understand that this is the baby's eating time than for the baby to know, oh, what is the time right now? It's not my food time. It's much easier for us to know that the baby is hungry because we can see and we can tolerate it than them to tolerate hunger. So that is my bit on the transition thing. And it was different than what we had done.
Of course, of course. So Devya, just one thing I wanted to ask you. You mentioned about the stress of not getting enough sleep or rest, or so. I remember once you also spoke about how that stress kind of, that the babies can feel the mothers being stressed, and that kind of passes on to them, and then the ripple effect kind of goes on to other things like breastfeeding, them not getting enough sleep. So, can you also talk about that?
So if you look at the research that comes out of the Heart Math Institute, it says that because your heart has three rhythms, uh, it puts out a field, an electromagnetic field, because there is electrical impulse. And one of the fields is 3 feet. It's the strongest in 3 feet. Now, the baby's heart started to develop and create its own field at 22 days. Can you imagine the amount of time these two fields have taken to synchronize? If you've ever seen one of those physics experiments where you kind of make things vibrate at different levels, over a period of time, they will synchronize,
Correct.
right? Now take that phenomena in two hearts beating. So they will then synchronize and have ways or pathways of understanding each other much faster. So one of the things that we can't control in stress is heart pumping.
Correct.
It speeds up. And when that speeds up, this also speeds up. And so for the baby, the speeding of the heart is an indicator that something is off. It's also an indicator of movement, but then there's a automatic drop. There's a self-regulatory drop when we rest. So the increasing of the heart rate is not the problem. It's the being pushed to increase is the problem. I'll give you an example. If you go to a group that is highly stressed out and then everybody's activated, you will also start to feel restless.
Right.
And if adults who are self-regulating mechanisms can feel that, babies whose nervous systems are completely hitchhiking on the mothers will constantly be feeling. And because they feel anxious, what are their soothing mechanisms? If we know that, their soothing mechanisms are sucking. They will suck at anything because they want to feel safe. It's a regulatory mechanism. It's interesting that nature has designed it so that food and comfort comes from the same place. But it's supposed to be used like that. But when it's absent, then they'll suck. The need for sucking will increase, which means, and then they'll cry because they can't self-regulate. They will cry, someone help me. So it's interpreted as hungry again and again, over and over again. What it does to the mother is that it makes the mother even more anxious because here she's blaming herself. She's saying, I'm not making enough milk. And the more she's thinking that, the more the baby needs to suck. So he doesn't need to suck for food. If you want to ever try it after a good meal, if the baby's still crying, let the baby be held by the father who's more grounded and offer their finger to suck. The baby will be happy sucking that. It just needs a well-adjusted adult to regulate him and offer him that soothing mechanism. So basically, if you look at tradition, we would, uh, you know, protect the mom or veil the mom from the outside world in the postpartum period because we don't want her to worry about silly stuff, especially if there was illness, if there was financial issues. We would protect the mother from that because that's a constant activation for her and therefore for the baby. So you can imagine.
Right.
Now, when we are listening to the outside story, and we are focused there, and we are saying somebody's baby sleeps through the night, somebody's baby has 8 meals a day, my baby has already started talking, walking, or whatever else performance is going on. We are not looking at the baby anymore. This may be not the right time. So tell me, where would it matter that your baby could identify alphabets at 8 months, or 9 months, or a year and a half? Why would it matter? Because by 7 years, everybody would be reading. But it would really matter in their growth, in their eating habits, in their relationships, in their trust issues, in their confidence, if they were well securely attached, if they had this idea that I'm worthy, that I'm loved. These are the important things in the beginning. Everybody learns to talk and write, and everybody learns it over a period of time. I mean, even in school, I don't remember how many marks I got in my first unit test in geography. Do you? Then is it important? I might still not know the capital city of many countries. But I do know how to look at an atlas and find it out. I mean, education is not about what I can retain, but the confidence with which I can take something on and say, oh, yeah, I can find that out. I can understand it later. I don't have to know everything. But it seems like we have little rote monkeys we want to produce and saying, how much can you take in? 1 TB, 2 TB, 3. What is your brain capacity to store data? No, not at all. So what we do need is a substratum in our brain even the moment we come into the world that says, oh, you got it. I
So
think
that
that's a
is one of
big,
the questions that we keep getting from a lot of moms as well. That the baby still feels hungry even after being on the breast for X number of minutes. And I remember somebody telling me recently that the doctor has advised that she should be feeding the baby 10 minutes each breast.
yeah,
So
3 hours.
how does that work?
Because doctors prescribe medication, they are in terms of how much and how many times. So I'm gonna give them a prescription. If they can follow it, I'm good with this, and we'll see what happens. They are supposed to eat their meals every 3 hourly and so many grams. Can you eat like that? Can anybody eat their food and enjoy and have satisfaction and gain from it if I prescribe it like a medication to you, even if it's your favorite food?
Correct.
Hunger is not just the number of calories. Hunger is about chewing. It is about engaging with body and brain, or our gut and brain makes when we eat food. Some of them are for digestion, but others are for satiation. That's why we eat slowly. Some of them are to tell us or our brain what to feel in terms of satisfaction. You know, if you start eating a bag of chips, and if you keep eating at a certain speed, you can eat 3 bags of chips. When you stop eating it, see what happens. We take things so unidimensionally. And because I mean, as an adult, if I don't take food multidimensionally, multifactorially, God help what we think about the baby. But when the baby's at the breast and suckling, this isn't about the food he's transferring. It is. He is transferring. It is about how he feels at the breast, or she feels at the breast. It is about the attention of the mother. Any breastfeeding mother who's talking on the phone will have a baby who will stop sucking and looking at her and start crying. Have you not experienced? It's about the quality of your attention to the baby. And
Right.
it's not like you're making an effort. It is so coded that it happens automatically. It's not one of those things that you have to do. You know, I give very crude examples about doing and being. So, yes, of course, there is a certain mechanism to food. You have to make food, you have to eat it, but it's not something that you have to think and do. It's not a checklist. It is something that you organize yourself automatically. I think we have very, again, unidimensional way of looking at things that are arise out of us through things that we do. If you stay sitting on a chair for a certain period of time and you are mindful, you will feel like getting up and stretching on your own. Whereas you can have a clock that tells you, or a watch, or an app that tells you that you have to make 10,000 steps. One is doing, the other is being. Even though you're getting up and walking, and you'll, after a while, then you'll sit down again, you'll find that your mind gets organized, you feel like, oh, that feels better. It will happen automatically. There's the difference between you being. So being doesn't mean you're lying in bed passively. Being means you're following the rhythm of your body. And the routine means the app is telling you that now you're thirsty. Did you know, as
Right.
adults, and this is about food, most of us miss the cues of thirst and think that it is hunger. That is why we overeat. Most of us. When we feel thirsty, we don't know that, and we think we are hungry, so we eat. But basically, if we just pay attention to it and have a sip of water, you will know immediately that I was thirsty. You would never overeat. This is something I've discovered in the last 6 months.
Right. So we
So,
have one. Sorry, Divya, go ahead.
no. So we've reached like a 50-year ahead of the transitioning babies. Back. But we have these capabilities in utero, in preparation of coming out and meeting this world. That's
So someone sent a question asking, what about formula-fed babies? How do we, you know, soothe them?
Would you see commonly in cultures which have a lot of formula feeding or bottle feeding? Not just formula, bottle feeding, because they're not getting that sucking mechanism on. What do you see a lot
Right.
there? You see soothers, passive. So the sucking need and the food need have been separated. They fragmentized an experience. And not to say that we have still not found a way to bring the presence of the mother to these two mechanisms so that we may
So
seek
what
different ways.
so what would your recommendation be for this mom?
Okay, it's a suggestion. Um, think for yourself if you break down soothing needs versus food needs versus your presence for the baby. Would so that means a few hours you spend with the baby, then you sterilize the bottles. I'm not even talking about formula, but you're giving food other than the breast. And then, of course, you're sterilizing the pacifiers and making sure that it's in the baby's mouth and hearing the baby cry a little bit more, which seems like more hard work than hearing the baby and putting the baby to the breast and carrying on which seems like lesser work.
But there could be various reasons, Divya, that a
Yes,
mom
there
is
could
not
be.
able to breastfeed. So,
That's good. There could be. So you'll have to find a nice little balance. So as long the baby feels comforted by you, has some amount of oral, we will talk about it in the oral baby section. You will find that they'll be fairly okay. Their need for sucking is not that much. And if their need is for sucking, whether at the breast or the bottle, is quite a bit, then we have to say what is making them so anxious that they need to soothe themselves more and more often rather than the other way around. How do we shut them up? Is the symptomatic approach. But what is causing it? How about we look there a little bit? Then we go back into saying, how was the pregnancy for you? How was the birth for you? What was the was it medicated? Was it unmedicated? How was the beginning of the baby's life? And then check in with the baby. They themselves know their story, so even checking in with them. Repair is
right,
easy at any time of your life because remember, your body is designed and craves and moves towards healing. It is looking for an opportunity to heal, no matter what time of your life it is. So I've explained this again, but I'd love to do it again. It's like a credit balance, credit debit balance. If you have X amounts of credit, you know you can use it for these things. So your body's normal inclination on your credit, which we call as trauma therapists resources, is to healing. If I have the resources, I will make the antibodies, which we say, high immunity. What is that? That's a resource. How do you develop high immunity? Because you're not using your energy and your effort towards stress. So you have all that resource to have a high immunity. But the mechanism of immunity will continue no matter how stressed out you are to a diminished degree because healing is the innate property of your body. So for babies, that's even more true because they have lesser history, lesser story to get caught up with. So the minute you check in with the baby about what they need, they'll show you. The whole the somatic psychology, the somatic world talks about how babies speak or tell you the narrative with their bodies. And if you allow them to complete that and give them a foundation of safety, they can put it in the passing, yeah, that was a one-off event and it's over, I'm safe now and move ahead. So I'd say if you're seeing excessive crying, excessive anxiety, excessive need for sucking, more than worrying about what will soothe them, inquire into the cause. And
right.
personally, if you want, my bias is no silicone nipple for many reasons, but I'll give you a very practical one. When you put the breast in the baby's mouth, the breast tissue adapts to the shape of the mouth. But when you put a silicone nipple, no matter how good the flow is like the breast, that's one aspect. The shape does not change. And so for different babies with different oral cavities and the palate being soft, it does not always, but can push against that, changing the oral cavity and everything else that might arise from it later in life because it's developing. Also, sucking mechanism on a nipple is different than that on the breast. So this pressure changes jaws, and you'll find that later might need correction because there's not enough spacing for the teeth. So there are many, mechanisms that are for whom the foundation is being set in this period. And so whatever naturally has been encoded is working towards that. Having said that, you could look at an appropriate or an optimal time where you can go as far as you can, because again, a happy mother is a good mother. So nothing is ideal, but you should not do it out of not knowing, but knowingly. Many times we make decisions that are not ideal, but for us, they are optimal at that time. And that might be the case for you. You definitely, I believe in that. But uh, to to arrive at a point in life and look back and say, I wish I knew, is just such a waste of that time and effort. Now, the fact is that if you knew, you may have still made the same decision, but at least the regret would not be there in your life.
Right.
I think that's more valuable.
Right. There's one more question which I think, if we can just quickly give an answer to, because we will be covering it during sleep session as well. And she says that I've been advised to make my baby up for a few hours so that the baby sleeps better.
How old is the baby?
That I'm not sure.
It depends, no, what their level of tolerance is. But
Yeah.
newborns, it's so funny that I find people want to discipline their newborns. Do they know discipline? As far as I'm concerned, you can teach them then scriptures as well, because if they're capable of learning it, discipline is because discipline, you cannot discipline anybody. All discipline is self-discipline. You can force them because you can exert your power over them. You cannot inspire them. So discipline has to come in. It's. I mean, there are many levels, factors to it, not levels, but factors to it. How disciplined am I as a role model? Because parenting is lead by example. How disciplined am I? How do you tell children to get disciplined when their brain cannot understand that concept? And all they can understand is, you're there, but you're not doing this for me. And then gradually, as they begin to grasp that concept, and you could, bring in, and you can still give them choices. In my personal experience, very limited to kids, but also many other babies that I've interacted with, if you go down to their level and treat them with respect and tell them that they have a choice, they would 99.9% of times make the right choice. The 0.1% is when they cannot control their emotions. Give them some time and support, they will make the right. So see, again, it comes to the same thing that I said for an adult. It may not be an ideal choice, but they will know the difference. They may not be able to make it, but they will know the difference. And they will do it from a place of knowing. And that also means that you're teaching them, you made a choice, you take the consequences. And you start that early. You don't start it when they don't understand choice.
Correct. That actually quite applies to toddlers as well. So
Yeah,
this morning I read one of the posts from Gauthari Priya, about siblings, and it was just at the right time it came because we have to keep reminding ourselves that we can't be burdening our older one with so much expectations when their mind cannot process it or they're
no,
not ready to
no. You know how that might be feeling
understand
for
those.
them? How your 3-year may be feeling because they have to grow up?
Yeah,
It's the same idea, no?
yeah.
We must meet, and I'm going to say it universally, every human being where they are and respect that this is who they are today. It doesn't matter what their age is. So whether they have the brain support to do what we are asking them, or their experience is challenging them, who are we to judge it? The only question we can ask ourselves is, can we meet them? And the answer, the choice is still with us. Yes, we can. So we step up. No, we can't, because we also have our own process. Then we step back and name it. I cannot meet you right now, which includes moms also saying that, baby, mommy is having a bad day. Or I would like you to do this for me. Not you are supposed to do this.
Right. Great. So that was a good discussion. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this Talking Tuesday. I'm actually learning every day while being with Divya about
I learned in
baby,
Coffee
not just
Con.
not
I
just
learned
about
something new
babies,
from
but
Himani Dalmia in Coffee Con. It was fabulous.
correct,
Like
absolutely.
it was a
And
light
not
bulb
just about
moment.
babies, about us as well as adults. So, yeah, it's a great learning. I think it's good to learn every day, So, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we'll continue talking because we love talking.
Yeah.
And you'll see more of us on every Tuesday. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye bye.